I had a bit of a existential crisis a couple years ago.
We have one every year.
Stop. I mean, yeah.
So SkinnyTok is just a bunch of hot, skinny girls telling other people how to be hot and skinny, but they will neg you, right? Instead of empowering motivation, they will just criticize you. Do you want a snack or do you want to be a snack?
Do you want a snack? Or do you want to be the snack? Because you can't have both.
I would sugarcoat this, but you would eat that too. And then a classic is eat small, be small, eat big, be big.
I caught in my algorithm recently, which was, I think it's Russian propaganda.
Which means it probably is.
Which means it probably, yeah, it's like, if it smells like Russian propaganda, it was, why is it that all the girls in Moscow are really hot? And it was basically...
Because they're driving SkinnyTok.
Exactly.
It's a Venn diagram.
There's a lot of cope happening on both sides of this conversation.
Is this your innie or is this your outie?
Oh, this is definitely my innie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I am. This person right here is doomed to podcast every day for the rest of his life.
What do you think your outie is doing?
God, he's living his best life. My Audi enjoys long walks on the beach. Forever 21 is declaring bankruptcy. All Forever 21 stores are closing.
So temporarily 21?
I have no idea what it's about to happen, Orchid, because you're like Seabiscuit. I'm just gonna hold on today. Let's see what happens. Orchid, you're in your third career, but I think that third career might be a TikTok career these days. But no,
you're a professional TikTok watcher.
Yeah, you're in private equity now. I think that's the thing.
Apparently, yeah. I just ride the coattails of men forever and ever, and I will die being surrounded by them. So, I was like, why, a PE bro? Why not me? Not wearing a vest today. I'm still trying to figure out the dress code, but I like to shop. So now we just shop for companies instead of shopping for clothes, and that's kind of fun.
You saw Succession, and you were like, gas up the PJs. You're like, that's me. That could be me.
Yeah, absolutely. And my 43rd birthday's coming up, and I've always wanted to rap on stage in front of a group of people and have a very loud midlife crisis. Now, I will never beat the loudest midlife crisis that anyone's ever seen, and that is from Mr. Zuckerberg, but sure. I can try.
I mean, you're not going to unless you actually give it a go. So why not? So we're going to talk a little bit about, and maybe heroes and villains coded here, Aritzia, Sperry. I think that's a little new. I don't know. We'll talk about that a little bit. Because
Should
part
I
of my
if
algorithm,
they're a hero?
I don't know. I mean, I'm foreshadowing. Because some of my TikTok algorithm these days is sort of the quality of apparel and whether you should be shopping at Aritzia and whether it's good or not and whether it's worth the money or not. And then Sperry, I just think is it's so very, I don't know, it's very bro coded. I don't know. That's a whole thing. I'm curious why that's even happening. I want you to tell me. We talk a lot about culture and commerce. I think you talk a lot about the culture in particular on your TikTok. Love following you, by the way. And I think you go through bouts. You're very online sometimes, and then you're very quiet sometimes. Are you Are you very quiet, or are you very active right now?
So my TikTok focuses on brand collaborations just because that's a thing that I like. And when I feel inspired by the brand collaborations out there, I will create content. If it is all very uninspiring, I will not create content. So that's what the cycle is.
All right, let's talk about some things that are inspiring right now. What's out there right now that you think is worth talking about, and why?
My radar recently is the Aritzia and Sperry collaboration for about 2 styles of boat shoes in 2 colors each, so 4 colorways. Overall, though, I know we're talking how boat shoes are very old money. They're very yacht club. They're very New England. Well, those have been trending, I want to say, over the course of the past couple of years. You first saw it, I first saw it through Miu Miu. So Miu Miu's been actually doing well when we look at all the luxury brands over the course of the past few years. A lot of them have been suffering a decline. Miu Miu's been top at the list for multiple seasons. So they came out with a very low profile, slim boat shoe. I think a lot of what was getting them press was actually their collaboration with New Balance, which we can address differently. But part of their style that was they were bringing was paracords, right? So those paracord shoelaces, laces, they were bringing them into more traditional profiles like a boat shoe. So I should probably grab my pair. But so they have a low profile one. We know that's trending. And so what I really liked about Sperry and Aritzia, and there are flaws to this collaboration strategy, but generally, Sperry's known for boat shoes. I think they're going to have a great year regardless. But to your point, there's a very clear stereotype of who the Sperry consumer is. It's the dad shoe. It's like for country clubs. Like it's not a Miu Miu. So through their collab with Aritzia, they were able to bridge that gap into fashion and the fashion girlies who had not considered Sperry in the past. So of these two models that they have, one of them, the slim boat shoe, they actually sell on site. So I was like, I don't know that that's like that much of a departure. But the other one it's more of like a boat moccasin. And just like the stitching is different and it has like Aritzia on the tongue. But what's really interesting about it is the ability to customize. So you can actually take the leather laces out of the sides and replace them with this like needle kit that Sperry includes, which you can buy separately on their site for $12, and then weave the paracord through the sides. And so that you're personalizing it and it actually just looks like a dupe for Miu Miu. From a cost perspective, and I've done a lot of research on this, so this is like my special interest for the past few months, is that the Miu Miu boat shoes are roughly $1,000. Okay. Sperry's on average, I would say on the high side, they have like $300 boat shoes. Otherwise you can get them for like maybe like $120 on average, 120, if not less. On sale, you can get them for like $60, right? Sure. Haven't even talked about channel 2. So we won't get like that detailed into it. And so the Aritzia Sperry collab, they were $120. It included the personalization kit. Again, that's a $12 value. And when you hold that against maybe like a Frida Salvador who's selling $300 boat shoes, or even Everlane that's selling $200 boat shoes, I think that's a really great price point for Aritzia as well, because we know a lot of the online conversation has been that they've been increasing their prices and the quality's gone down. So in terms of their go-to-market strategy, it was also really interesting because all the press was around Sperry and Aritzia, but it only featured the Aritzia launch date. And so on the day of, I think it was like maybe the day after, they were largely sold out of all sizes on Aritzia. And you could not find the collab on Sperry's site until about 5 days later. And Sperry started to run, just like, paid meta ads against it, which is how I found it, but not much fanfare. And they did not sell out as quickly. So I was like, that must have been really interesting in the contract negotiations, where it's like Aritzia's like, oh, okay, well, we need to develop a boat shoe, right? Because it's on trend. But we actually want all the press centered around driving customers to us, the retailer, because then it probably allowed them to place a higher PO against Sperry.
Wow.
So anyway, I thought it was really interesting.
I think the strategy of that's really interesting too, as far as like the driving interest and where you drive the traffic. But and then Sperry has their owned D2C,
yes.
and then stock, I think, ostensibly kind of just sat there.
Yeah, it's been kind of sitting there. I've been surprised. I bought them the day of, so I think they're coming on like Wednesday or something, so we can do a follow-up, but we can do an unboxing. But they really, like, the large focus of the media and the earned media was around the launch and getting them on Aritzia. So if we think about the current Sperry consumer, even if they're using their own CRM, even if they're using their own consumer profile to target paid ads against, that's not necessarily the Aritzia consumer. I would also say from just an online experience, Aritzia did a really nice job with their PDPs. Is so tactical with their PDPs of videos showing you how you can actually personalize the loafer or the boat shoe. Whereas if you look at the PDP on Sperry, they don't even include it as one of the PDP images. So I would just say from like a online merchandising perspective, Aritzia is just so much better at that online storytelling than Sperry has been. Largely probably because Sperry is a large enough brand in enough retailers where .com is just not a primary focus for them. Not knowing anything about the financials of the business, I would guess, I have to find the information, that online is probably only like 10% or less of their total business. That would be my guess.
I think this is so fascinating too. I'm like watching the video on Sperry.com. Like we can actually drop the link too, and the way that they sort of like take their time in showing you how the needle works, and how you would sort of customize it as well. I think that it's an interesting dynamic. In the way that they're, like you said, they're sort of flexing the brand into a new buyer and a new category, because Aritzia to me is a different person altogether in who they're trying to target, right? And that's to me seems like a bit of a stretch for the brand, but if successful, I mean, what does that do? It's the sky's the limit then, right? There's what's the next stage?
For Aritzia, it was to find a trusted partner in order to create a high quality product that meets like the trend and consumer demand of the existing Aritzia consumer. Whereas for Sperry, it was about capturing a new consumer. So I would say their objectives are probably pretty different. And you'll start to look at brand collabs this way too. I'll give you another example. So just the pairings of Ulta and Target versus Sephora and Kohl's never made sense to me, because I always thought it was closer with Sephora, Target, and then Ulta, Kohl's in terms of like their consumer sets. And then I realized, I was like, oh, okay. If you're in a strip mall, you likely have a Target and you likely have an Ulta, but you don't have a Sephora. You also likely have a Kohl's. So what's interesting is like, okay, if Target and Ulta are in the same park, then are you actually cannibalizing Ulta consumers because they're just making the stop in Target? That said, if there's also a Kohl's in the strip mall, because I would say like, and this is like a Midwestern strip mall sort of, setup,
sure, then
Sephora would never be in that location, but now Sephora is there in way of Kohl's. So it still like doesn't really, unless, Ulta's just trying to capture like new to category buyers into Target, like people who don't shop beauty at Target, because Target's assortment is largely mass, whereas Ulta is bringing in like more prestige makeup. Correct. So like that could improve the overall basket value. So that kind of makes sense.
Do you have an Ulta in the Target near you? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's fine.
But it has its own checkout, right? Like you have your own.
No, it doesn't.
So in mine,
so it has its own build out, but
right,
you actually check out in like the regular checkout.
So that's interesting. So in mine, it has its own checkout. It has its own
that
register.
Is interesting.
What's really interesting is there's also like a Kendra Scott sort of store.
Yes, I saw that.
And Warby Parker is going to do a new collab, or they're doing a shop and shop, I guess now with which is strange because I think Target Optical is its own thing. So I don't know how that's going to work.
It is.
Yeah.
Unless they replace them, like slowly replace them.
I guess that would make sense.
Because what does Walmart have? Walmart has one of like Lens Crafters or one of the like the big
correct.
mass
they have
ones.
a big one. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. I would just say from an operational, I mean, I think that's the question, because like from an operational sense, if you're going to do a store within a store, I would do it where you don't want to hire specialized labor for that, because that's a very different operating model than like getting someone to stock the shelves. So I think it actually makes sense to bring in a partner who's like known for being able to do that at scale in like different footprints. So I think if you don't have a Target Optical, it makes sense for Warby Parker to come in, because I would imagine like the demographic and just the overall audience is very similar. And if you're just trying to extend LTV, grow the basket size, and probably grow the shopping number of shopping occasions into Target. Like that seems to make sense to me.
We do have something to rep at Future Commerce. So if you'll do me the honor, we have a brand new book. It's called Lore. It's 280 pages. It's a journal from Future Commerce. It's our annual journal. And this deserves a place in your own personal legend and myth. This is a Future Commerce book that is from Future Commerce Press, and 14 individual contributors that helped to make this year's journal possible. Let me go to the overhead.
It's so pretty.
Thank you so much. And this year we got together to ask ourselves, do we write the story, or is it already written for us? This year, our individual contributors got together and we said, part of what makes the commerce industry so rich and so vibrant is that it takes an entire industry that comes around the story of commerce. And the story is not just the story of a brand, but it's the story that consumers weave. And we live inside their world. They live inside the world that we create for them. But what's also really interesting about it is that it's very, often brands are very mythology coded, right? Legends with lore, myth. Lore is part of what we create in this world when we create a brand, and commerce is at the center of it all. And you can have this book on your coffee table. Why not have this live forever on your shelf? $75 from Future Commerce Press. Go get it right now. futurecommerce.com/lore and make it part of your own personal lore. And we'll see you at Shop Talk just next week. Have a whole pop-up just around this. We'll see you on the show floor, and come check that out. futurecommerce.com/shop talk. We'd love to see you there. So that's
Not going, but can you FaceTime me in?
Yeah, I'll do that.
FaceTime me in. Yeah, I'm on vacation. That's why. But FaceTime me in.
I really wish that I could take vacation. You're
like, what's a vacation? You're like, how do I pronounce that?
8 years I've had Shop Talk it's fallen on my kids' spring break for 8 years. So there you go. That's my personal lore around this. But your lore, you had probably the coolest role ever. You were like in an innovation role at Nestle for many years. And then your personal lore with me is that you co-hosted Infinite Shelf here at Future Commerce. Then you did an agency stint, and now you're in private equity. What that seems like such an interesting turn. Tell me,
that's a very generous way of saying make it make sense.
Yeah, make it make sense. Tell me what you're working on.
Well, I joined Andvest, which is a boutique PE firm, about a month or two ago. And the reason why I really thought it was going to be the next step in my career was because, I have a consulting background, agency background, and creating valuable companies. Now, you can do that a couple of different ways. I think the very stereotypical PE way of doing it is, you become the villains of the story where you buy a mom and pop shop and you send them on their way, and then you automate everything, and then you sell this laundromat, right? So there is the turnaround story. I know that's like a very egregious example, but it's out there. So one way is the turnaround is to capture companies coming out of bankruptcy, fix the underlying business model of that company, which, I'm happy to talk at length about, and then turn it around and, go from there. I think that's a very stereotypical path. I think the reason why I went to Andvest was because we have a very different model of that. We're taking companies that have really great fundamentals, including brand, and saying, okay, they're scaled to grow. How can we add more fuel to this rather than saying, hey, here is a company where we're going to cut to the bone and turn it around that way. So our whole mantra is really about transforming businesses into brands that matter. And we take a very consumer demand centric approach to that. So yes, there is finance, there are Excel spreadsheets, there are ways of making the P&L healthier. But at the end of the day, we really care about telling the brand story. And so we really focus on being very founder friendly, companies that are still founder led. Because, and you've seen this too, I'm sure, there's such a huge difference between a company that is being managed by a bunch of people who maybe don't have the vision versus the founder really driving the creative vision, the ethos, the storytelling of the brand. And that's not something that a large company can easily replicate.
Something we talk about forever. on Future Commerce is that the like sort of the strategy pyramid, people focused, especially in the content arena, on tactics, right? So it's at the bottom of the pyramid. Strategy, right, is the thing that ladders you tactic, like ladder into strategies. And we talk a lot about goals, right? So goals are the things that you align your strategies toward. But at the very top is vision. Like who creates vision in the organization? That's why we created our event series called Visions. Is like we're really talking about like who holds visions in the modern organization. And outside of the creative director in like a modern fashion house, I'm not sure outside of the founder of an organization who has vision anymore. And so I like the idea that you're partnering with founder-led companies to help them maybe like help create the next level of vision for their companies. Like, give me an idea of the brands in the portfolio at the moment.
Yeah, so we're really squarely focused in beauty right now. So one of the co-founders, the two co-founders actually, they sold their agency to Shiseido years ago. And so Doug Jacob, one of the co-founders, he became Shiseido's global creative director for a few years. So very, very grounded in beauty. It's recession proof. And it's a nice to have. Like, you don't actually need to buy beauty products to have a really fulfilling life, but it makes you happy. It's a way of artistic expression. And so it's really fascinating. I think just coming from my background in food and bev, going into beauty, there are so many similarities and also, obviously a ton of differences. But back to vision really quick, though, I think a lot of companies try to create vision by committee, and that just doesn't work. Right. And you've been in situations where you're all just kind of huddled around a deck, or you go into a 2-day working session and you say, okay, what do consumers want? But like, what also helps us make money? And like, it could be that. And then what happens is that there's typically not a very strong creative point of view. So you start to look at brands that do, and they end up being brands in niche categories, founder led, clear point of view. And then what happens is that many companies kind of look at that as a playbook. So that's why for a while, every new brand we saw was sans serif and had pastel colors. And so as a founder, the question becomes like, well, you are going to have other companies try to be a fast follow or copycat your idea, your vision. So how do you continue to evolve it in a way that doesn't lose the core ethos of what your brand was and what it was founded on, and those consumers who have been very loyal to you since the beginning? But how do you get the permission to evolve in a way that allows you to continue to lead the field?
And that sort of bridges back into your cutting edge, where I think you came out of innovation, right? So understanding like who maybe has that eye for vision, who has that eye for innovation, and sort of can see the future. And you said to me many years ago, right, seeing around the next corner. I loved that. Like I feel like that's not like a new thing, but I think being able to see around the next corner is what a founder, typically has been able to do. So somebody who was able to see what was coming, and they manifested that in the world. And that's what brought them to the point of being able to like have some sort of successful exit, brought them to that point saying, okay, we're going to take it to the next level. And I love that is saying that, an exit to PE is actually not really an exit. It's like, okay, it's taking a leap forward, right, to accelerate the business so that there's something beyond that, because PE is sort of like it's like a gateway to the next exit, right? That's how you're thinking of it, right? It's because you're setting it up for the next stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's unique about Anvest is that, not only are we partners, we're operating partners as well. So we're actually embedded in the companies that we're working with. And it's a really fascinating dynamic where you have equity in the company. And so technically, the brands are working with you as you're the owner, but also you're there to help serve them and set them up for success. So it's a really fascinating daptic. I don't know if it's just recency bias, but ever since I made the job change, a lot of people have approached me and they're like, hey, I've considered doing something like this as the next stage of my career, because I felt like I've built onto my expertise over time. And now I would love to work in a fractional CMO, fractional CFO, like capacity within a company in order to genuinely help them. And I think too, at our age, like, there are certain tracks where as you progress, you kind of get out of the weeds. You're not you're not an executive operator anymore. You're just kind of in people management. And so I've found that my happy place is really still understanding the details of the work, and executionally what needs to happen in order to bring the strategy to life. And I think that that's especially true when you have any kind of digital capability. Because, and I heard this years ago, but the average shelf life of a digital skill is roughly 18 months. I would say it's probably even shorter now.
Yeah, it's getting shorter every day too.
It's gotta be, I think, based on what I've seen, I think it's 3 to 6 months. I think if you are not, inside the platforms, knowing how much the platforms change, especially when they change without telling you, I think you have to be hands on keyboard, maybe not to do the full execution, but to be dangerous enough to know that whatever you're recommending as the strategy moving forward is actually possible.
I had a bit of an existential crisis a couple of years ago. I was in e-commerce.
We have one every year.
Stop. I mean, yeah.
That's what we call each other.
But this particular one that I was going to talk about was 20 years I've been in sort of the e-commerce industry in some way, right? And I was a software developer for about half of it. And to me, there was the sort of the retail experience side of being in e-commerce. I was always in like vertically integrated businesses. So I knew how the entirety of the business worked. And for those who aren't familiar, like the vertically integrated business means like that business did literally everything: source their own, manage their own supply chain, source their own materials, like manufacture their own products literally in-house, and then fulfilled them, right? And that means we managed all of our own channels too. I knew the marketing people. I knew the supply chain people. Like I knew the people who managed paid search. I knew the people who created the catalogs. I was the people who made the print catalog and the website. And like, so I knew how the whole business worked. And I felt like as e-commerce grew and as the demands and the scale of e-commerce grew over time, the role of what e-commerce meant in the ecosystem slowly shifted further and further up the demand funnel. And now e-commerce somehow weirdly means like meta ad buying. And that's all it means. Like you're in e-commerce only if you are a Shopify app developer or you're a meta ad buyer. That's what it means. And it's weirdly relegated to those two things and only those two things. And I feel like we're poorer for that. And I'm lamenting a little bit, but I'm also feeling like I really feel strongly that very few people have the whole context of how the entirety of a business works these days. And that, to me, that scares me a little bit. I also wonder if I'm just a dinosaur, but like there's very few people understand how the entirety of a business works. They've never seen the whole of a business. And I feel like we would be so much richer if people just could walk in and see how the whole of the business works. Like for instance, I have the great fortune of knowing a lot of business owners. And last week I went to, there's a guy locally who, a team who was on Shark Tank a couple years ago called the Bordery, bordery.com. And they're killing it. Like started as like cheese boards and charcuterie, and they're scaling to lots of different things now.
Wait, did you have them at your house? You had them at your house.
Yeah,
that was so good.
They're unbelievable.
Such a great charcuterie board.
And like $200+ AOV. They're like killing it. And
they deserve every penny. It's delicious. I don't know what their margin is because it's like very high quality, like meats bonkers. And things like that.
It's bonkers, is right? It's bonkers. And they've scaled now to like 40,000 square foot. Like they're doing an unbelievable, build out right now, and they're growing to every category. They're focusing like maniacally on EBITDA, and like they're phenomenal business people.
I'm surprised is their margin so good? Because if they're shipping, like, refrigerated shipping, and
Oh, it's
especially at
unreal.
that weight, is
Yeah.
insane. It's
It's
insane.
unbelievable. I think like they're just very, very, very good at sourcing incredible suppliers,
Yep.
striking phenomenal deals. Their employment is incredible employment. They know how to really work. They've got a great system for employment. They take advantage of every single employment opportunity available to them. Like they've really got the whole system down, right? They understand
That's
how
impressive.
to run the business, right? It's
Yeah.
not just about like the ad buying. They know how to run
Oh,
the
yeah.
business, and so like
Totally.
their options and their optionality for an exit are plenteous, right? Like all of
Yes.
their options to them are open, and they know that, and that to me is like, I walk around their facility and I tour their facility and I'm like, oh, no, they have a million options available to them. And so, they're exploring all these options. They, for instance, they're asking about, well, like, I don't want to blow up their spot. They're talking about all kinds of really
No
interesting
charcuterie
opportunities.
trade secrets.
Right. They're talking about all these things that there's like, I don't think any stone is left unturned as to like all of the things that they could do in the future. And I think like they're not beholden to anything like technology wise or anything, because they have no preconceived notions of what you do in this e-commerce ecosystem. They have no for them, it's all about business efficiency, margin efficiency, driving EBITDA. And like, that is not how a lot of people approach this ecosystem. And I think that's refreshing, actually, to be honest with you.
I mean, two things can be true. You can be a dinosaur and you can believe that e-com has become synonymous with ad buying. And I'm right there with you. I think I'll do you one better. E-commerce has been synonymous with D2C. Right.
That's
but
true.
If you're an omni-channel brand, e-commerce as an umbrella, you have your brand.com, but you also have your retailer.com. You have your Amazon, you have your TikTok shops. Like there is just e-commerce is so much broader. And exactly to your point, you're not going to optimize your meta spend to business health. Like you're actually like whatever your ROAS is on the meta side is a function of how healthy the rest of your business is. Do you have your cogs in check? Is your shipping efficient? That's why it's like with Bordery, I'm like, wow, like refrigerated consumables as an overall category is hard. And without a retailer distribution, and to do that at scale through e-com and shipping is bonkers. So they must be incredibly disciplined business people in order to understand all aspects of it. Because when a brand says, hey, my break-even ROAS is like a 1.9, let's say, I'm like, okay, well, it can actually be lower if you got your cogs under control. You had like better shipping contracts, negotiated rates, your 3PL, you have better, like I've seen a lot of contract structures of 3PLs where I'm like, oh, that's not a good structure. Like you're never going to make any money here. Right. And then I think just understanding your business to your point of like, okay, AOV $200, that obviously impacts your CAC and like, oh, can I charge a pricing premium here? What is someone's propensity to spend? And I'm sure with Bordery too, like they've probably, and I don't know much about this company beyond having it at your house and it was delicious, but they probably made the choice.
In the show. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. I was like, I could hold one up and that would be great. So, I mean, part of it is they probably made a decision on corporate events versus individual consumers, fulfilling large POs or selling eaches. And, you kind of go from there.
I told them I was really glad.
Super easy.
I know. When I talked to them 2 years ago, before they launched D2C, before they went on Shark Tank, I said, I don't know, it's brutal. D2C meta ads sounds awful. I think that's a terrible business. Maybe you should go after a corp dev. And they were like, I don't know. And then, they didn't listen to me and now they have a great business. So I'm really glad they didn't listen to me. And I tell them that every day. I was like, thank God you didn't listen to me.
That's all right. They probably tell that story too.
They probably do. Yeah. But we're friendly. But here's what I think it comes down to is, I think being able to, I said all that to say, a lot of folks, I think discount the whole of being able to see the whole of the business as an operation and and not just your individual. Like I hear the word operator a lot, and I think that the operator of it all is really just understanding like there's one role player in a business, but I think that the whole of the business is really a full operating entity, and I think that we're seeing less and less vertical integration these days. And so, yeah, I'm curious what you see in the PE side is like what do you sense is valuable, and what you're seeing in like sort of deal flow, or what you think that the industry is going to see in the PE industry is going to see a lot of in deal flow, and what might be more valuable. Because I sense that there's a lot of businesses that will probably be looking for more exits in the coming years, especially within the tariff environment. And we're going to be seeing there's going to be a lot of pain to come, I assume. And there's going to be a lot of people that are looking for, there's going to be a lot of people looking for the exit door. And I have to wonder that a lot of businesses that have, a lot of fractional ownership of their business, where a lot of it's just been kit of parts that they don't really own much, right? There's things that have just been sort of cobbled together. It's a brand, but in reality, it's, a lot of fractional ownership of things like, it's IP at most, and everything else is sort of like rented labor and rented factories and facilities, and everything could go away overnight and they really don't have much. So I'm curious what you think is valuable these days.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like, being outside the walls of PE and staring in, you're like, oh, I'm sure there's some kind of magic sauce here and what they identify as something that is high potential. And then when you get on the other side, it's not rocket science. It's business fundamentals. So we know that growth is harder to find these days. Obviously, we've said this a million times, but the days of Warby Parker are over, getting cheap CPMs on Meta and all that fun stuff. We've been saying this for years. And so when you're looking at, and a lot of it is just looking at the business's P&L and saying, okay, over time, has your CAC, really skyrocketed, or is it actually consistent and you're still growing at a good clip? Is your AOV increasing? Okay, of this category, what does LTV actually look like? Because I think it's unfair to expect high LTVs from a category where, there's just no switching cost. So if your LTV is not great, but your customer acquisition is super efficient and you continue to grow that way, great. Okay, well, in an omnichannel environment, are you getting more contracts? Are you getting within the contracts, retailer contracts that you do have? Are they giving you more doors? Are they giving you more shelf space? Those are all really good indicators that there's really good consumer acceptance of those products within that space. What's interesting, I think, coming from a very .com centric world is the changing role of .com. So a lot of businesses that we're looking at are omnichannel. And, even in my previous experience in talking to various companies, they're like, okay, well, what is the role of .com, considering it's not going to be your growth driver anymore?
Right.
I think we're seeing Amazon as a huge growth driver for a lot of businesses. And candidly, selling your product on Amazon is a lot less heartache than it is operating your .com. I can speak from experience, right? And so the question becomes, okay, well, in order to avoid channel conflict, well, A, do you think channel conflict is an issue or do you not? Meaning, okay, I'm selling one product on, let's say, Sephora for $20. I'm selling it on my website for $20, but Sephora is going to have their midsummer sale. So is that a problem that I'm going to have it at a higher cost on my site or at a lower cost? If I have a lower cost on my site, then the retailer, are they going to be mad at me? Is the assortment the same? Is the assortment different? Does the consumer have a reason to actually come to mybrand.com when actually Sephora's loyalty program is much stronger and much more compelling, especially in a category where people are fairly brand agnostic? Right? You're going to buy your blush from one company. You're going to buy your eyeshadow from another. You're not necessarily going to buy soup to nuts, your entire makeup bag from, of products, from one particular brand. So, in that case, what is the expectation of .com? Are you happy if .com is just stable as long as it doesn't decline? Does that just mean your expectation is for a 10% growth rate rather than 30%? And so a lot of what we look at in the financials is, yes, you're staring at someone's P&L and you're trying to analyze it based on saying like, okay, what are the decisions they're making? Do we believe that the assumptions that they're making over the course of the next 3 to 5 years actually hold up against the current business environment, against the known knowns? And then to your point about vertical integration and just like knowing the total business, yeah, product mix is really important. So is 70% of your revenue from your core products and you're getting 30% from newness and from product innovation? Okay, is that actually growing over time? Does that mean that your core portfolio is actually a little weak and that means that you have to focus on new innovation? Are you developing new innovation in a very data-driven way so that you know it's going to hit or you know it's not going to hit? Or are you just trying to take a lot of shots on goal and say like, hey, I'm going to launch like 10 new products this next year. I think only 3 of them are going to hit, but if they hit, like this is how much that franchise is going to be. And so I've never been like a finance person, but it's really fun to just look into like a company's P&L, especially with their forecast over the next 3 years, and start to like see like where they're making key assumptions about the business and like whether or not you agree with it.
Okay. That's a great pivot because what does the next 3 years look like given this, like how would in the world would you even forecast the next 3 years given all of the current environment? There's not a lot of certainty. How are you doing deals right now? Because I think like every other week it's tariff this, tariff that.
Yeah. I think it's really hard to break through that noise. Because, 1 week it's like, oh, we're doing tariffs. And like the next day it's like, no, we're not doing tariffs. It's like, oh, we're doing tariffs in 30 days. So it's like, yeah, of course, in that environment, I think it's not certain like what the next 3 to 5 years are going to look like. And I think this is the same thing as working out, right? Like for people to have better health.
Oh, it's exactly the same thing. Yeah. It's like, keep going.
It is.
Okay.
No, yeah. It's like for you to be in like good health, you need to eat eat whole foods, right? Or watch your calories and then also like work out, right? Or even like the entire narrative around like losing weight. At the end of the day, you need to be at a calorie deficit, right? You got to like burn more calories than you intake. People don't like to hear that. It is boring. And, it's like, yeah. They're like, but what about Ozempic? Okay, not Ozempic. Okay, what about this other thing? What about creatine? What about just eating a lot of protein? It's like we're trying to do all of these things to get away from the fact that like if you want to lose weight, you need to be at a calorie deficit. And in order to be in good health, you have to move your body. And I think that that's the same thing with what we're going to see in business. Is that everybody wants to look to a different thing. And so that's why a lot of the conversation has been like TikTok shops, affiliates. Okay, well, the financials of affiliates, like you have to watch it very closely. Otherwise you're going to go upside down on it, right? You have to decide if that's going to be a marketing expense or if you're actually, expecting revenue from there. And so like my TLDR for the next 3 years, it goes back to business fundamentals. And I think that you just have to be so diligent about every dollar in and every dollar out and run your business in order to maximize EBITDA. If you get to a point where you have too much cash on hand and you want to reinvest in the business, then reinvest in the business. I think what happens a lot of times is that companies, when they start to build up a bit of, cash, they're like, oh, well, who knows about a rainy day? Like, I'm okay. Like, oh, what can we reinvest in the business? Oh, okay. No. I really like to have cash on hand. And so at the end of the day, you make the business choices that are right for your brand, your category, and like what your overall goal is. A lot of people, they like to have lifestyle businesses. I don't really understand it. Seems cool. But like that's their goal, right? So I'll leave you with like one story. I was at this, I forget which winery I was at in Napa. And I was like with a couple of girlfriends and we're just like going around and like wine tasting, right? And they said, oh, well, we have this one bottle and it sells out every year. And I'm annoying. Okay. So I was like, well, what have you considered like maximizing production? Like that to me clearly tells me that the demand is there. Like you could be producing. They're like, no, we're actually just really happy with selling out every year. I was like, oh, okay. Like I just like had never considered that as like a response before, you know?
Just, like, no, we're totally happy just selling out. That's totally fine.
Yeah. And I was like, but you have all this excess demand. Like, you're not servicing it. And they're like, yeah. Okay.
But so with the way that the economy, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? And I think that's sort of created a lot of...
Has there ever been certainty, though?
I think that's a fair question. Has there been certainty? I don't know that there's been certainty. I think there's been sort of directionality, maybe. I think that there's not a lot of clear directionality. I think a lot of people assume, and maybe falsely assume, that the point of the presidency was to grow the economy.
Oh, yeah, well.
And that seems to not be the point at the moment. It seems to be the point at the moment to impose some austerity measure. And that seems to be causing a lot of people to scratch their heads. And to me, I feel like that's a really interesting turn of events, because I don't think we've seen that in my lifetime. And so that seems like a challenging market to invest in. And that seems like a challenging market to build a business in. And I think it's a challenging market, especially in retail, to have to, to accomplish marketing in. So I think that intellectually, that's an interesting, it's an interesting environment for us to have to navigate. I think a lot of people are going to find that like it's a very frustrating time, but I think intellectually it's an interesting environment. Like, oh, these, like, I don't think we've ever had this before. I think that's interesting. I think a lot of people are probably.
Well, that's what Twitter is for.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would argue that a lot of things that are happening now have been happening for a long time. They're just being accelerated. So as an example, erosion of the middle class, the bifurcation of the economy between, the rich are getting richer, the poor continue to be poor, and like that middle class just continues to go away. So I think like the presidency now, yeah, there are a lot of people who, maybe supported the current presidency who they're not getting what they thought they were going to get. I would argue we're getting exactly what, a lot of us thought we were going to get, which was that the rich are going to continue to get richer. The tax breaks are going to go to the rich, the erosion of like public programs and public funding. And so I think if we were to, bring it to the like very unpassionate world of business, then yeah, if your target audience are people who consider you a luxury and will only buy you so often, they're going to vote differently with their dollars. So I think we see that with handbags quite a bit, the luxury handbag market, right? Where it's like, hey, you have like the Chanels of the world, their quality's gone down. A lot of their styles, and this is my opinion, but like a lot of their styles like just don't look premium anymore. So people are going to go to like the counterfeit market. They're going to buy vintage goods. Like that's a trend that we're seeing time and again, where things were made better. So I think part of it is like these things were always happening. I just think the current environment is exacerbating and accelerating a lot of it.
What else are we looking at on the sort of TikTok trend side? What's kind of caught your fancy?
SkinnyTok. So SkinnyTok is just a bunch of hot, skinny girls telling other people how to be hot and skinny, but they like will neg you, right? So they do it in terms of, instead of like empowering motivation, they will just criticize you. So like as someone who grew up in an Asian household, this is very familiar to me. So this is maybe why it like resonates so much. But as an example, SkinnyTok has a couple of sayings. So they'll say like, well, why are you treating yourself? Are you a dog? They'll say, do you want a snack or do you want to be a snack? They'll say, I would sugarcoat this, but you would eat that too.
Oh, God.
They're already talking about you behind your back, don't make it bigger. And then a classic is eat small, be small, eat big, be big. And so this is obviously incredibly controversial because SkinnyTok is also exists on a spectrum. You have some influencers who are very much about, hey, like capitalism and like overconsumption in America is something that, and I'm paraphrasing, driven by big food who just wants us to ingest more calories, and they've created breakfast even though it's not a real meal, and just because it's that time on the calendar doesn't mean you need to eat. So there are some people who are there who are saying, hey, I'm actually helping you understand what proper portion size is. So a proper portion size for steak is 4 ounces. When was the last time you saw a 4-ounce steak on the menu at any restaurant? It's like 16 ounces, 32 ounces, like whatever it is, right?
Sure.
So that's one SkinnyTok, which is like, hey, you need to move your body. You need to walk 10 to 15,000 steps a day. Go ahead and like eat clean. You should have a more balanced meal. You don't have to eat when you're hungry. Don't eat just because the clock says so. So that's one side. The other side is obviously incredibly toxic, right? And a lot of it is very questionable because it becomes, okay, you as the receiver of this content, can you take it for what it's worth and make the decisions that are right for yourself? Or are you someone who's going to take it too far? Are you, a younger girl with like, body image issues, and this is just making it worse? And so SkinnyTok has just like absolutely captured my attention because of the discourse around it, right? This decision, because like there are some, it's kind of like how a broken clock is right twice a day. Like there are some things where it's like, oh, that actually like makes a lot of sense. And then there are others where I was like, ooh, I don't know. Like who knows how the algorithm is serving this up to someone. Sure. That's what I'm watching.
I don't even know how you got there. I feel like that's not far off from what I caught in my algorithm recently, which was I think it's Russian propaganda, which is
which means it probably is.
Which means it probably it's like if it smells like Russian propaganda.
Right.
It was why is it that all the girls in Moscow are really hot? And it was like basically it was like
because they're driving SkinnyTok.
Exactly.
It's a Venn diagram.
After scene, and it was scene after scene of like basically like why is it that women in Moscow basically they're of a different breed? And then the comments are like filled with people like, well, if they're an oppressed people and this is their only way that they can possibly escape their oppression is to marry a Russian oligarch. And I'm thinking like there's something very strange happening in this. One, how did I get on this side of the algorithm?
That's the question.
The other thing is there's a lot of cope happening on both sides of this conversation. It's like, yeah.
It actually, the Russian propaganda actually reminds me of when everybody went to Red Note for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And do you remember that? Like, so a lot of the Chinese users were saying like a welcome American sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then Americans were saying, hey, I'm American, roast me.
Yes.
And one of my favorite roasts, I probably think about it every other day. I used to think about it every day, but now I think about it every other day. Someone was like, hey, I'm American, roast me. And one of the Chinese users is like, why do Americans eat like your healthcare is free? I was like, oh no. Or they said things like, oh, is it true? Like we thought maybe it was just like Chinese propaganda against the US, but do you have to pay for your ambulance? And we're like, oh, no, that's true.
Wow.
Well, you started this recording with like, I don't know where we're going with this. I was like, me neither. That's the fun of this.
I like that. There's just the analysis of, the use of social media to like shape not just attention, but shape the way I think people think en masse. I did the code switch. Dang
Bona fide.
Bona fides. But the way that we're sort of thinking in groups. I think we've come around to, I think, recognizing that happens. I think we understand that happens. I think maybe we're okay with it is the thing that's scary. I think we're okay with the fact that we're being shaped in the way that we think, and we're okay with that now.
Yeah,
Gen Xers probably aren't okay with it. Everyone else is.
I mean, I think it comes out in a lot of ways, right? It's like, I sprinted to the comments, right? And I think it's always interesting to like run to the comments and understand what's happening, because some people will say, oh, this is so interesting, but I have no one to talk to about this. Right? Or, hey, consider me influenced. So
wow.
When I see those things, like that to me signals that we know exactly what's happening. And I make the joke too, which, every funny joke has a bit of truth to it, is that, TikTok probably has all my data, but if it makes my algorithm better and gives me things that I like and spikes a little dopamine hit, like, you can read my texts. Also, I'm like a 42-year-old woman with like a mom of like 2. Like, what? Like, you're gonna find out that I'm like organizing a play date? Like, I don't have anything juicy in my texts anyway.
I think a lot of people too who have been, really concerned about Siri listening to them for years have all just figured out that Siri was actually listening to them for years.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
and people were saying goodbye to their Chinese spies when like TikTok was shutting down. They're like, or they make jokes about like, oh, for the FBI agent watching me, like this is just a joke. So there's a part of it that to me signals this like acquiescence to like the surveillance state, or that in order for an algorithm to work really well, it needs a large amount of data.
Yeah.
But I tend to be a cynic, so take that for what it's worth.
Something that hits a little close to home, as we're kind of like bringing it back to the world that I live in, right? And the world that maybe you've come out of as in your prior career. We have given our data to so many places. Right? It's like, and we are jacked into the matrix. For instance, we shipped the lore books to lots of folks in pre-orders, and hundreds of these books just went out. And I had people emailing and texting. Like I got dozens of emails and texts all at one time saying, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And I was like, why did I get these all at one time? Well, the shop app sent everybody a notification that it shipped. Right. So I was thinking to myself, like, that's really interesting that everybody, like, the realization to me is that everybody that I know, everybody has given all of their information. They basically opened their Gmail. Yeah. We all have just allowed Shopify to just read our email, they're just jacked into everything that we're doing. They can just read our email. Like, that's no big deal. That's fine. I'm sure Toby and Harley are doing great things with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Seems fine.
Seems totally
fine.
Cool.
Well, what's funny about that is that there are complaints sometimes that like the message isn't even personalized enough.
Yeah, I know, right? I want this to be even more personalized.
Right. This is just your standard form email. What about the thing that I was looking at? Like, I want to get, like, what I bought. So if I bought a top, why don't you send me an email with like 3 pants or like different outfits featuring the top that I can style with in order to, jack up my LTV. No consumer says that, to be fair. But
yeah, that's true.
This consumer says it, but other consumers do not.
But if they did, that's
really what they would say.
That's exactly how they would say it. That's what they want. All right. Well, I feel like we've had a really like shockingly wide-ranging discussion.
It's not that shocking. It's the two of us in a conversation.
If we had to pull out some heroes and villains this week, I feel like we have a lot to choose from. But before we do, I'll give you a second to think about it. We're going to hit it one more time for those at home. We have the book of the year. This is our new journal. It's called Lore. We've spun some lore, you and me, in our day, Orchid. We have some lore between us, and you can have some lore of your own. Go get it today, futurecommerce.com/lore. $75 ships to 200 countries. That is if you're if your country only allows it.
There are 200 countries?
There's over 200 countries. They do not allow this book. We figured it out. They do not allow this book in Qatar.
Okay.
This is not allowed. We found that out the hard way. But most countries do allow it, and we do ship it same day that you order it. But the next shipment of books will be shipping first week of April when we get the second edition in. So get your copy, futurecommerce.com/lore, and we'll see you at Shop Talk. All right, let's do heroes and villains. Hero of the week.
Hero of the week, White Lotus. White Lotus.
Oh, wow. Give me why.
I think White Lotus and all of the brand collabs they've been doing, authorized and unauthorized. So Merritt actually featured one of the actresses, I forget which one, who's on White Lotus right now in one of their paid TikToks. So I thought it was really interesting because I was like, oh, okay, well, it's not like tied to White Lotus, but obviously when the cast was announced, they reached out to the actress who was going to be in it and then released this TikTok around the time that there was like this person was going to be everywhere anyway. So I thought that was cool. Tom Below, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they sell like kind of like these short sleeve like button downs for beach. So they actually had quite a few, like the wardrobe stylist for White Lotus pulled a few of their designs for the show. So they've been putting that into ads. They've been putting it in emails. Like, I don't know if they knew they were going to be featured on the show, but I think that they've done quite a nice job in like telling everybody. It's like, oh, okay, this is the show. It's really funny. So it's a white shirt that one of the characters is wearing, and it has like alligators on it. So the name of the print is Reptile Dysfunction. So apparently it was sold out, and now it's on pre-order again. So I really love that for them. So winner of the week, White Lotus, obviously generating a lot of buzz and conversation and analysis of the different episodes, which I think is a point in the column for having episodic content that only releases once a week. And then all of the brand partners who have really leaned into, their brands being featured on the show.
Oh, God. Okay. I'll take that. Hero of the week. In that case, I will say the hero of the week. I was going to pull something from the show. You gave me license to go a little further abroad. I saw this meme, which was somebody posted. I'll have to link it up here in the show notes. And it was somebody who posted a custom T-shirt that said, "I got severed at Claire's." And so it was... and it made me think about a universe in which you could get, just like you get piercings today at Claire's in the mall, you might be able to get this severance procedure done at Claire's in the mall.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is this your innie or is this your outie?
Oh, this is definitely my innie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I am this person right here is doomed to podcast every day for the rest of his life.
What do you think your outie is doing?
God, he's living his best life. He's not having to do this for the rest of his life. I had no idea what I was signing up for 10 years ago.
That's fair. All right, cool. That's like a fun exercise. And then, I'm sure that like turns into a therapy session when you ask people what their innie or outie is doing. So,
my outie enjoys long walks on the beach. And then villain of the week, Orchid. Who's the villain of the week?
Pepsi! Pepsi is the villain of the week for buying Poppy for $1.7 billion.
$1 billion. What's your take on that story? What's the take on Poppy, and what's your take on Pepsi's sort of acquisition of it? What do they do with it?
Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts. So I think with Poppy, it's interesting because people don't realize that this packaging is actually part of their rebranding. So it's actually very similar to the Halo Top story, where before it seemed very like crunchy granola packaging that was like versus doing new branding that is a little more, I almost said pop, but like a little more fun, a little more colorful. And so Poppy, I think this speaks to the fact that branding and comms and marketing like will really turn a brand around. I know that's like really obvious, but I think it's just like really interesting to see that. And I don't know if it's technically part of the category of permissible indulgence. I actually think it's lower calorie than that. But when you look at a poppy, the entire premise is that, it's good for your health, good gut health. And it's also tastes like a soda. And it's like, what is it? Like 20 to 50 calories or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think like that's still, even when America was on this like health bent, people still like, that's why Halo Top succeeded too. It succeeded under the entirely same premise. It was like, you can eat an entire container for the same calories as like a cup of another ice cream. Yeah, people are just going to be able to eat more. So I think permissible indulgence is alive and well. So I think Poppy did a great job with their rebranding and their overall positioning. They're speaking to like the basis consumer wants and needs. And then Pepsi they probably saw a healthy underlying business model. And they probably said like, hey, by nature of us getting this into convenience stores, more grocery, expanding doors at grocery, this gets us an incremental X of like this type of brand. They're probably looking at the product formulation, and they're going to say, okay, how can we negotiate better rates just based on our size? And are there other ingredients that we're already sourcing from various manufacturers or farmers, whatever? And how can we get a better rate on it? So they're probably looking at expanding distribution and like decreasing cost of ingredients. It's a very typical playbook.
But
I will say large companies are not in the business of turnaround. So when they make an acquisition like this, it's not because they believe like in the brand and like the overall and things like the business model needs fixing. They'll probably get some like cost efficiencies around that by saying like, there's probably like redundant workforce, like our internal brand manager or whatever. Obviously I never worked at Pepsi. I'm just kind of making wild guesses. This is just a joke. I don't know what you're supposed to say to not get sued. So this is just my personal opinion of imagining what could be going on behind the scenes.
Got it. There was a Twitter thread. This is always my perennial issue is still being on X.
I can't believe you were on there.
Andrew Rimlinger did mention that there was a $300 million net loss on Poppy's books. That and then the 1.7 or 1.65 billion dollar acquisition could potentially be. There's like a step up basis and like a tax benefit to that loss and to Pepsi. So I learned something in this process is something called Section 338H10, which is something I didn't know because I'm not in finance.
That's so fun.
Future tax benefits and $300 million in future tax write-off in an acquisition.
It's just numbers in an Excel spreadsheet.
So interesting.
Wow.
Right. So villain. Oh, interesting. I think taking a brand and rolling it up, that folds into our prediction this year of the age of agglomeration. I think that's where we're heading. Villain of the week. Okay, so villain of the week for me, and I think that this is going to be
Guy Talk from White Lotus. I'm just kidding.
I'm a little bit behind, so don't ruin it for me.
Oh.
I think it's going to be tough for me because I think that it's sort of falling apart. Obviously, Forever 21 is declaring bankruptcy. All Forever 21 stores are closing. Also, Dollar General is closing 100 plus locations, including a bunch of their pop store locations, which is a very far departure from their proposed December 6th opening of 545 stores. So I think this is the villain of the week is this new economic policy that is seems to be, and tariff policies that seem to be I don't know, it seems to be changing a lot of things. But I think on the positive side, if it shuts down our overconsumption and cheap goods that are creating a lot of trash in our world that we just dispose of, maybe that's a good thing. So silver lining, ? But I don't like when the problems disproportionately affect people in lower middle incomes. And I think that to me is those people always lose. And that is, systemically in our society, that seems to be always the problem.
So temporarily 21.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Forever 21 also hasn't been relevant in the environment of Zara and H&M. Like Zara and H&M have been doing such a better job at just their value proposition and their overall styling. So like I would say Forever 21 might be hiding behind like tariffs and new economic policy, but like they haven't done a really good job in like staying relevant.
Been true for a long time. But they had the partnership with Shein for returns as well. I feel like they
why though? Why? Yeah. Why do you want? Why? Like this is the problem. So we have a Lululemon pop-up shop in our little like downtown area, and it's been a pop-up for a year. And they're like, okay, well, I won't get into. Yeah, I'll stop myself. So, but they've opened it up to return. And so people are still going to order online because there's a larger assortment. The sizing is better. They probably want to try things on in their own home. And then they just use that location as like returns. So like you tell me, like, it just doesn't even make sense to me. Maybe you're saving money on like shipping and postage back and forth and like helping the consumer experience. You also have to have like retail associates who are well-versed enough in order to save the sale or save the return and like actually like have someone convert on something else. I'm really sorry. My brain is entirely broken. It is all capitalism right here.
I love it. Orchid, the hero in my eyes is you. Thank you for coming on this week in Brian's absence.
Maybe the hero's the friends we made along the way.
I love that. Where can we follow you on TikTok? To get all of the
Don't follow me on TikTok. I mean, you could. It's Orchid Burt at Orchid Burt. Great. I do have a 3 million view TikTok where I made fun of Balenciaga's new shoes. But the problem with that strategy is that I will never get anything free from brands if I keep making fun of them. So I need to rethink this strategy.
We'll just launch a new one where you praise brands. And we have a very short half-life of memory these days.
Yeah. Hashtag or like at brand shill.
I love that. I love that for you. When you launch that, we'll promote that too.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll link it down in the YouTube. All right, thank you for watching. And if this conversation sparked anything for you, you want to speak back to us, we'd love for you to drop us a line at hello@futurecommerce.com. Also, like and subscribe and follow us wherever you get podcasts, and hit the bell icon below. It helps you to follow this conversation. It helps more people find our channel. And if you want to bring Future Commerce into your world, check out our print shop at futurecommerce.com, where you can find commerce and culture in your world with beautifully crafted journals and prints and zines and other collectibles. And remember, commerce shapes the future because commerce is culture, and we'll see you next time on Future Commerce.